About 1 minute ago, according to our time, The Interview. Have you heard about The Interview, this little film that's upsetting the people in North Korea? It apparently debuted on YouTube. You can download it or stream it for apparently $6. And it has become pretty obvious to me that this is the biggest and best publicity stunt of all time. So I want to start with our movie man. Was this whole thing a setup?
No, it wasn't a setup. But there's a tremendous amount of dishonesty in it, and just you should always look at what powerful people say with a careful eye. The president of Sony Entertainment, who said after Obama's press conference, when the president said Sony should have released it, and he went, the theaters pulled the movie. What was I supposed to do? And someone was like, well, what about on the internet? We don't have a way to do that. Yeah. What are you saying? We don't have a way. First of all, he didn't just apologize. He said, essentially, we stood firm. We did not back down. We were ready to fight and stand up for freedom. And you were like, well, then why not release the movie on the internet? And he's like, well, how?
Yeah, and by the way, for the record, Sony, which owns PlayStation, is a streaming service, and I'm pretty sure they own Crackle, too.
And somehow they've managed to figure out how to get it on YouTube. Yeah. I guess it's just like initially Sony had called YouTube, and YouTube wouldn't take their calls. I'm pretty sure that if Sony wanted this movie out, they could have had it out. And then, of course, they also didn't do the other thing in their principled standing up, which was call the theaters back and say, please don't, or call smaller theaters, or make any attempt whatsoever. Obviously, they were very comfortable pulling the movie. But no, I don't think it was a publicity stunt. It didn't need a publicity stunt, and it's fraught with gigantic peril.
Right. So if it's not a publicity stunt, though, doesn't the threat still stand? The idea that the hackers said we're going to do some kind of 9/11, like that still stands, right?
I mean, if you freaked out about every anonymous threat that was issued online, then everyone would be in a constant state of panic.
Yeah,
right?
We'd have to end this show right now.
Right. I mean, I'm getting 12 terroristic threats right now as I speak, right? So I never really thought that anyone was facing any imminent danger due to this movie. I'm still really skeptical about North Korea being behind the hack. Right. But one thing that I will say, just commenting on Ben's commentary, there's something really admirable about people saying, you know what, we made a decision, the decision was wrong, and we've changed our minds. But instead, people want to pretend as though they were on the right course from the very beginning. They weren't on the right course, okay? They totally wussed out. They deleted all social media accounts that were related to the interview. Yeah. They canceled all screenings. They canceled all interviews that James Franco and Seth Rogen were supposed to do.
They killed James Franco. Somebody put him down. He's gone.
He's gone. That's it. So now Dave Franco can finally...
There's no body. We don't know. Right.
Yeah. Do you think, all right, so forgetting conspiracy, I'll go with you, no conspiracy, fine. However, do you think that this was like a little test for the industry, at least, of going, maybe we start doing this simultaneous YouTube streaming thing with less theaters, like some shift in how they operate?
They'll certainly be interested in how this does. And then they have to factor in how this does related to, how much hype was there. A lot of people, you two guys, I guess, weren't planning on seeing the movie. I saw it, a month
you've seen it
I've
already?
seen it, yeah.
Well, I mean, nobody else in America is more than 10 minutes in right now.
Let me tell you exactly what happens in this.
Well, that was incredible acting for a guy that does a lot with the movies.
Thank you. It's pretty funny. It's a little stupid.
Really?
It goes too far at times. I think James Franco is the weak link in it, just because that sort of Ron Burgundy-like character, it needed to be a little more or maybe a little less, but he was sort of in between on buffoonery, and it doesn't work. But Seth Rogen's pretty good, and it's a kind of an interesting. It's funny. It's funny. They made a comedy. They make basically good comedies, and this is one of them. I think that when you see it and you realize that this was the touchstone for sort of standing up for artistic freedom, that's going to strike people as a little puzzling. That this was where we. But they're funny guys, and they made a pretty funny movie.
Yeah. So, final thought on this. To your point, do you kind of think that cyber war is scarier than real war? That's what I was thinking. Like, I'm not worried that anyone's going to hit us with a missile. I'm really not. Pretty much nobody's shooting a missile at us.
Yeah.
But there was like a 24-hour window where it really seemed like we were taking away our own freedoms because of a cyber threat.
Yeah,
so that does seem scarier.
The issue with hackers is a serious one, and regardless of where the hackers are from, I don't know if they're from North Korea or from the United States or some other country, it is scary to know that if you have lax cybersecurity, hackers can get into your personal email account and leak all sorts of embarrassing things, right? So we have an issue with the government spying on us, but we also have an issue with, random private citizens that have access to all this personal data.
Yeah.
What are they going to do with that data? And a lot of those emails that were leaked to the press were super sensitive, super embarrassing, and I'm sure that alone really freaked Sony out, which is why they made their initial decision not to screen the movie.
Right, so isn't that the grossest part of this, though, that these hackers, whether you're for hacking or not, or anonymous or all that stuff or not, these were private emails that those people were sending. Like, we don't want our private emails hacked into. So what do you make of the sites like Gawker and everything that were just publishing all the emails?
I had a moment yesterday where I got into the rabbit hole of it. By the way, Randall Park, who plays Kim Jong-un, he's extremely funny in this movie. Yeah. So I got into that rabbit hole, and it was actually on Gawker about sort of the Scott Rudin, Angelina Jolie issues.
I saw something.
And I got caught up in that, and you start reading the emails, and of course it's interesting at first to read private emails of people in powerful positions. And it's like they're playing out a scene from a movie about the industry. You're like, I can't believe people really talk this way, but they're really talking this way, sort of how you'd write it. And then you realize, but about 17 minutes in, and there's one story after another, and there's constantly more you can read, and is Angelina Jolie really sort of self-obsessed and egotistical and maniacal in her desire to get Cleopatra made, and the big fight of, are they going to make Cleopatra or the Steve Jobs movie? Which one's David Fincher going to do? It's so exciting!
Yeah.
And then you're like, wow, I don't care. I don't care, and I don't care not because I'm smarter than this. I'm interested in the industry. I don't care because it felt prurient in the wrong way. It felt like watching amateur porn, and not the good kind of amateur porn, but like porn, secret porn. Like, hey, this person they didn't mean for me to see this, and I don't even know whether they believe it. But we see it written and then in a story on an official site, and we assume it's what they believe rather than what they're saying to the person they're emailing in order to get them to come around to their point of view. So it's, Angelina Jolie doesn't need our help. But it felt unfair to her.
So, actual last point on this, isn't that like where we should be sort of angry, is sort of at the gawkers of this? Like, I get it, and I think you make a really good point that people write things in emails that aren't exactly, first off, it's not for public consumption, but it's also not always indicative of exactly how you feel, and you're playing a little game or whatever. So the companies and all the websites that release the emails, they almost seem like the worst part of this in a weird way.
Yeah, I mean, I actually have a lot of remorse because we covered one of the email exchanges on the Young Turks, and I don't know why I had that lapse of judgment, but I did, but that was the wrong thing to do. This is stolen information, stolen data, stolen emails, and you shouldn't report on it if you're responsible.
And it's juicy and all that, so I get your point.
First of all, you got to make a news judgment each time, and if in those emails, the ones you're talking about, and I was on that show with you, and we took that video down, and we disagreed a little, but it's funny, at the end of that video, Anna was like, I'm done with the story. Like, I'm tired of talking about it.
That's right.
Wait, did you actually take the video down?
Yeah, we took it down.
Really? Oh, okay, interesting.
It wasn't like we had some compelling conversation that America needed to hear anyway, but nonetheless, that was the right thing to do. But like, there's a point at which we wouldn't have taken it down, and this was the conversation where they were sort of talk about what movies the president would like because he was black. An embarrassing moment. I don't think it rises to much of a level of racism. I don't think it's demonstrative of anything except a poorly exposed email chain. But that said, if they'd used the N-word, we wouldn't take the video down.
Right.
So, and Donald Sterling crossed some line where we thought, yeah, that was a private conversation, but this becomes relevant. So, there is a point at which these stories become newsworthy into a country that these guys have marketed and marketed and marketed us and told us what we should like and told us what we should spend our money on. And then they get caught a little bit. Well, there's some newsworthiness to that. But I'm basically with you, is that it felt wrong, but I can't get on everybody. There's news there, and how it came out is I'm not sure they should be obsessed with. By the way, I just did a search and I typed in and the interview comes up on Google. That's pretty impressive.
And ironically, if I know anything about YouTube, it's that whoever is even paying for this thing is going to watch about 20 seconds of it, not even get through the initial credits, and then start watching porn. So there you go.